Hello, and welcome to the episode 32 of the Office Hours podcast. Today, Mo and I have talked about how to train your brain to do hard work, how to flip that productivity switch on demand, and what types of tricks we've learned to help us do so. Also, we talked about writing and blogging and how to leverage long-term content planning, how not to fall into a trap of triviality and create more value instead. I hope you enjoy what's about to follow. Hello and welcome to the episode 32 of the Office Hours podcast. We're welcoming back Mo, and without further ado, let's proceed.
Thank you. Thank you, Vasili. How are you doing?
Doing well. I know it's a beautiful Saturday morning. I have a little bit of sun poking out through the clouds, so it's going to be a nice day today, and I'm definitely looking forward to it. How about yourself?
Yeah. Yeah, it's good. I think the weather is getting warmer. Started to enjoy the patio. You want to sit outside. And do you work outside sometimes when it's sunny?
No, I haven't really tried it. I find that there's lots of like sun glare on the screen, so it's kind of nice, but at the same time, you constantly have to shift around to see the screen. And with being on call in meetings, if it's windy outside, then the microphone picks up all the wind, and it's just a non-starter. So yeah, not really.
Oh, so do you get be on call like often, or it's just like
Oh, no,
sometimes?
I don't mean like the technical support on call. It's just like I have a lot of calls throughout the day. Like just meetings and whatnot. And because I'm remote, I
Yeah,
constantly have to be on a headset, and they're crappy mics.
yeah. Like I was thinking because of the weather being nicer, I was thinking about setting up outside, and but but then again, it's feeling like that might be a bit too much. I mean, I get like if I have the calls, I can come back inside, but and have my calls.
Yeah.
But I was just wondering, like, what does it even feel like? Just you sitting on your corridor or wherever you are, like just holding the computer. Sometimes it makes me wonder how people who go to like coffee shops actually get work done.
You
I
know,
really,
I worked a couple of times. I have a friend of mine who prefers kind of working out of coffee shops. And I think the nature of the conversation, like the background noise, where everybody's kind of talking, there's a little bit of music. But because you're not really listening to any one conversation in particular, it ends up being sort of this just arbitrary noise that your brain filters out quite well. And you stop paying attention to the specifics and whatnot, and it's kind of soothing. It's actually not that
okay,
bad. Yeah.
dude. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know. Well,
Because I
I
think I
guess,
think in the office fewer people talk at the same time, so there's going to be like a conversation or somebody going to be on the phone, and it's much easier for your brain to like zoom in on that one conversation and have it distract you, whereas there's like 30 groups talking to one another, and it's all just like like you can't really tell
yeah,
individual strands of conversations apart, so you never really latch on to any one particular one, and you just filter it out and do your thing.
yeah. I mean, this week I got like invited to work in the library, and in the library, I realized that even though I used to enjoy to do other things in the library, like maybe if I'm doing my own stuff, but just didn't feel the same. You have your setup, you have your many screens or ultra wide, whatever you have your thing is, and being in a library kind of makes you feel like you're, I don't know, you didn't feel, I don't know how I felt about it. And that made me think about, people who work like in public places, how they get to focus. But then again, I thought about it like probably some people have like focus more in noisy places and get distracted in quiet places. Do you know about this?
Well, I can speculate about it. Like, if you're in a consistently quiet space, any kind of noise at any time is going to be like, oh, it's going to be a distraction.
Yeah.
But
But
if
what about
you're
the mind?
uh,
What about the actual mind? So for example, if you're like in a quiet place, your mind is also trying to find you distract.
that
So
is that is also true. I think that is true. I find that if you manage to sort of concentrate and enter that flow state, your brain will filter out all the noises. So it's kind of interesting. I have a couple of soundtracks that I like to put on when I need to do focused work. And so I think with time, my brain associates these soundtracks with focused work. So it actually makes it easier for me to focus. It kind of like bounces back from one to the other. Like at first I would
Mhm.
just like, oh, hey, this is a nice calming kind of soundtrack that doesn't really interfere with my thinking too much. And I can kind of focus and do some work. And then eventually with time, the relationship kind of changed. So I essentially like Pavloved myself into having this reflex. Like whenever this music starts
Yeah.
playing, it's time to,
Mhm.
sit down and
Ah,
start grinding and like really, really focusing and getting in a zone. So if it works that way, and I think there's been some research to suggest that these relationships are kind of bidirectional, like doing one thing in the presence of the other reinforces that connection. So then that other thing starts being causative for the first thing. It's
yeah.
like it it's like if you feel great, you would smile more. And they say, but like also if you start smiling, it will trigger some response in your brain and make you feel better, right? So it's a two-way
Yeah.
street basically. And so I have inadvertently trained my brain. It's like, hey, Diablo 2 soundtrack is playing. Time to get some work done,
That's what you play.
Yeah. Oh, that
That's
that that soundtrack is amazing. I like it so much. I
Diablo
mean, I
2,
like it
the
from the
game that
game, but even now, just through you wiring myself up that way. Now every time it plays, I'm like, oh yeah, let's get to business. So
this is it's really a good trick because games I think somehow increases like this kind of sound can increase like what's that thing? Is it dopamine now?
mm,
Dopamine, right? Like in your brain, and I think this makes you enjoy the work. I think the issue is like sometimes when you're doing like boring tasks,
mhm.
um, it becomes tedious because somehow your brain may not be enjoying doing this
Yeah,
task. And I'd never really, I think you mentioned it in passing one time that you listen to gaming sounds.
yeah, yeah,
And this kind of makes sense to me now because I guess sometimes I listen to like podcasts
yeah.
and or like I listen to music or just force myself to listen to the sound of my computer, just the sound, whatever,
Yeah.
But when I listen to podcasts, I find myself being more interested sometimes in the topics that they're discussing than what I'm doing. Or I get excited about what they're talking about that it gets me out of like
Yeah. It captures your
the focus.
attention way more
Ex-
than the task at
Damn,
hand. Yeah.
exactly. So like it's something I've been thinking about. And then I felt like if I go outside and like set up outside, what if I start looking at my neighbors things happening in the street and like I don't know. I guess I'm gonna try it and I will let you know.
Yeah.
But it's interesting.
There
Did you
was
did you
yeah, there was this short video from Huberman. He's like this neuroscientist guy, and he's saying that
Mhm,
there is some part of the brain with a quite arbitrary, very complicated name that I do not remember that is
mhm,
responsible for, you know, making you do the things you don't want to do. And he said that like the more you can train it, it actually it increases in size if you make yourself do the things you don't want to do, and in turn you get better at making yourself do the things you don't want to do.
mm,
I think
that's
it was a podcast between him and Goggins is probably like the icon of making yourself do things you don't want to do.
really is known for that.
David Goggins, the guy
Yeah.
who just like, I'm just gonna run 12 marathons in 5 days or whatever. He's crazy.
So marathon.
Well,
Yeah,
I
that's
mean, or
crazy.
obviously not. But if you ever heard
No,
him
no, this is
speak,
crazy.
yeah, he's a very very intense individual. Um, and obviously not everybody kind of has the tenacity to do everything that he does. But the idea behind it is like the reason he's doing it, it's because he doesn't want to do it to make himself better. So I think there's like some parallels to be drawn between these things where
Mhm.
you can train yourself to do the unenjoyable tasks and get better at getting to the state where you're like, okay, well, needs to be done, so let's get on with it.
Well, I guess it's the training process that is tedious. Because
Yeah.
it's not like you don't want to do it. No, so it's not that you're not doing it or you have it. In fact, you don't even have a choice than to do it. So it's not to do it. Doing it is not the problem.
Well,
It's the
it's just
amount
like
of
the procrastination is the mechanism by which you're just gonna postpone this thing, hopefully indefinitely, like to never have to do it. And so to
yeah,
break that cycle,
mhm.
to actually put some dampers on the procrastination circuitry in your brain, like you can take concrete steps to make it happen, but it's very unpleasant, and most people just say like, I don't like doing tasks you don't want to do is unpleasant, and training yourself to do the tasks that you don't want to do is also unpleasant. So you're like picking between two unpleasant things, and people are just like, screw that. I'm
Yeah,
not gonna
yeah.
do either of those unpleasant things if possible, right? And with let's say like animal training, like with cats, for instance. I mean, everybody knows that you can train dogs. Most dogs are smart enough to be trained to do all sorts of crazy things, but you can also train cats. And in fact, there has been many cases of that. Uh, in Moscow, there's like this whole circus that is predominantly revolves around like trained cats, right? And
Mhm.
they use the clicker. So they have this device that you press a button and it makes this clicking noise. And
Mhm.
so at the early stages, they associate correct behaviors and they reinforce it with treats and a click. So the cat gets to associate like doing some small task, getting a reward for it, and then there's a click as well. And then eventually, as the behavior progresses, like as it gets more complex, they usually like train them in. They train individual steps, and then they train like once those steps are all figured out individually, they start like chaining them in these longer sequences, which can get quite elaborative. And then at some point in time, the treat component gets removed, but the click remains because the cat already learned to associate positive emotion from a click. Yeah. And that
Yeah.
by itself is alone. Like you don't have to reinforce it with a treat every time because eventually the cat gets full and it's like the treat doesn't really work as well. Because I mean, like a treat is nice if you're hungry, but if you're full, treat it's just whatever, right? But the click,
No, it's not.
the click is kind of unrelated to that whole thing, but because it's
Well,
associated on a neural
mhm.
level, it works. And so for me, a soundtrack to Diablo 2 or Deus Ex Human Revolution is just like, okay, I've trained
That's your
myself.
treat.
Yeah.
Wait, so
It's not a
that's a
trick, but
treat.
it's a click, right? It's that thing that is kind of outside, but it's already tightly associated in my mind with this process of intense focused work.
Yeah. You know what? This is. I think there is a there is a terminology for this. I'm trying to remember. I'm pretty sure I've read about this before about in behavior therapy or something
Yeah.
like this, or like co-
Like CBT,
behavior
DBT, with
something like this
cognitive
around this.
behavioral therapy. I don't
Yes,
know. I don't know the specifics. I heard those terms being used. Let's say they very successful in treating certain types of conditions, but I don't know specifics exactly how they work internally. I was
yeah. I'm
mostly, I
just trying.
was, yeah, I was mostly going by like the Pavlov's conditional reflex thing. What he did
Maybe
experiments with
that's a
dogs like way back in the day.
yeah. Anyway, yeah, it's pretty interesting. And now I'm thinking about what kind of music do I enjoy so much? But when I go to the gym, there is this particular music I started listening to, just the same track over and over again. So if I spend an hour at the gym, I'm just listening to one track repeat itself.
Hmm.
And I noticed that I kind of enjoy it. So even even if I'm at home and I'm playing this track, I'm just energized. Like I just feel so
You
much
get
energy
inspired. Yeah.
rush. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
I just feel energy rush, but I didn't think too much about it. I just
Yeah.
felt like maybe I just like the song, and that's
Yeah.
it. But
I
this
had
makes
a I had a
sense.
couple similar things. So I guess when I was like in ninth grade and started snowboarding for the first time, there was this popular song by, I believe it was like a German band called Guano Apes, and it was called Lords of the Boards, and it was like very energetic. So it used to play a lot on the loudspeakers at the hill that we
Hmm.
were snowboarding at, and I kind of associate that song with that activity. So whenever I hear it, it's like, oh yeah. And there was another one when I was doing trampoline gymnastics. I think they played this one song by Katy Perry.
Trampoline
I don't
gymnastic.
remember one specifically, but it was also very energetic. And you get on a trampoline, you start like bouncing up and down. That song comes on, you're like, yeah, let's do it. So you can definitely form that association in your brain and leverage it later. So maybe try it out, like doing it deliberately, and see how that works out.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna find a song
Hmm.
that I like, and I'm just gonna listen to it
Yeah.
over and over when I work.
Well,
Maybe
so
that's gonna
the game
give me the
soundtrack is
same
nice
association.
because it's like hour and a half long, so you can get like this good chunk of time, because a single song is like 5 minutes, like 6 minutes, and modern songs are even shorter than that. So like you're gonna get bored of it way quicker. But a continuous stream like for hour and a half of different songs works quite well. And the other thing too is
Okay.
once you start hearing those final tracks, your brain
Mhm.
is like, oh, it's been an hour and a half already, time to take a little break. So it
Okay.
works on many
Okay.
levels.
You
Yeah,
know
it
what?
works on many
Yeah,
levels.
it's good training because I think anyway, I was just thinking about like this with like how to get like better focus if you work outside and like if you would you know also to improve like concentration. But I guess there are different ways to it and different tricks, but I like this one. I did
Yeah.
not think about this time, but
Yeah.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I
I'm
think for
probably
me it
going to
was
change
kind of
my
kind of
mindset.
accidental. I just analyzed it later on to see if it makes sense.
I'm a sucker for things like this, so yeah, for sure. I will try it out and I will let you know. But I don't know if I like any game. But I play FIFA.
Yeah.
That's the only kind of game I play. And there is the music on there are just like regular music. They're not like specific to
Yes.
FIFA or like
Yes. Yes. Well,
to soccer itself.
that song, uh, "Thumb Thumping" by Chumbawamba. That was like on the soundtrack of one of the EA like FIFA. Maybe it was like FIFA 2012 or four. I don't remember. I get knocked down and I get up again. It's quite
No.
a quite a famous song. But
No.
anyway, that song is
No.
very energetic, and that was on like the FIFA, one of the FIFA games. So
Yeah.
if you enjoy that, you could maybe
You
listen to
know
that
what?
one.
I think it also depends on the type of song. Because if I'm listening to that type of song, I'm trying to reduce the volume. Like this is too much. It's too
Yeah,
loud for
yeah,
me. So I like the chilled song, just calm, just relax, breathe. You got
yeah,
this.
yeah,
Those kind of things. But
yeah,
anyway,
yeah. I don't think it's gonna happen
everyone,
in a week anyway. You probably need like a bunch of
yeah,
time to kind of
for sure,
get it going. But once you figure it out, it'd be interesting for you to sort of share that experience.
for sure. So yeah, I'm thinking about what I would try, the kind of songs I would like. Like the song I told you I like for the gym. I enjoyed it and I enjoy going to the gym just so I can play this song while running.
Hmm.
Or like play this song just while doing something with so much energy. And anyway, we'll see. We'll
Yeah,
see how it goes.
yeah.
We'll see how it goes. So today I wanted to talk to you about something that I've been working on. Um blogging. So recently Um, like I have my blog on a platform, Ashland. But I started thinking about how I think you probably also blog. You blog too, right? But
Uh,
I don't think you
yeah,
do it actively, but I
yeah.
figured you probably know some things about
Like the last 20 posts on my blog are
it.
just like links to the podcast episodes. Like I haven't written anything in particular,
Hmm.
though, there is like sort of a project that might happen once I get the hardware. I ordered like a very beefy mini PC to try to build like a little home lab and maybe a NAS. So maybe once that comes in, I might do like a little write up on it. But so far I've been sort of caught up in the daily things that are fairly mundane at work, so that I don't really have that much to write about right now. Plus, whenever we have these conversations, like there's so much creative output just through the podcast alone. Like writing, it's
Yeah.
like, oh man, I have to. That
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
So I guess like the challenge now is that I think I'm getting to a point where I'm starting to look for what do I write about? Because initially my idea was to do like tutorials on programming tutorials and then things. But then I started thinking like with the whole introduction of these many tools, many other platforms, I don't know how many people still consume tutorials anymore. I'm I'm saying this as a projection
yeah,
because I've not really seen the data, but I find that even on YouTube, like like a lot of people used to watch like if you want, let's say you're working, maybe for people who are just getting into it, I guess that can be the audience. But I find that before, if you're working on something and you don't know how to a new tool or something like this, the first thing some people do would probably to go to the docs. And sometimes the language in the docs feels a bit too ambiguous, and you probably want to watch someone on YouTube talk about it, or some sort of tutorial, or read a blog somewhere. And I'm just at this point, I'm starting to feel like I think I've written so much about Angular and like so much about no, and I don't know what else. I'm not too sure how to scale to change the topics in a way that it is more. I'm not. I mean, either ways, it is valuable. It's just like I want to know what would be your counsel if like you want to um prepare content like this in written form that will be um, valuable to the ecosystem, to a lot of people who work in this industry. And yeah, I guess that's the thing because at some point you can only say too much about Angular or Ruby or whatever you say. Like, at the end of the day, um, you will you get you get to the point where you're no longer feeling like I feel like I'm repeating myself now. So, but how do you find new things to do? Because every day there are new problems that you solve, especially maybe at work in your personal project. But
right. I think that with the number of people who are they're all at different levels. So there is going to be someone who's interested in whatever slice of complexity that you're highlighting right now,
mm,
right? And I think that maybe a good idea would be to prepare like a content plan, like have some sort, like sit down and instead of writing a blog post, you write what you're going to write about in the next 6 months and maybe have like a
okay.
little arc. You can start from low level concepts like, hey, this is how you set up a brand new Angular project. Have a little write up, right? And oh, now we want to talk about doing state management. So here's NGRX. We can do a short series on NGRX. We can maybe do a little sidetrack into observables in general and the concepts there. But if you have this progression, then you can set out a trajectory for yourself for like the next 6 months, 8 months, 12 months, right? And just define the milestones that you want to cover and think about it, prepare some notes in advance, and then you'll have some guiding principle in what you want to write about. Because sitting down and coming up with something to write on a spot is probably the very difficult part, because it's like, oh, I already talked about this, I already talked about that. Yeah, the muse is gone, But if you have a plan, it's like this week I'm talking about, the peculiarities of rendering cycle as like what happens if instead of passing plain props to the component or inputs in Angular's parlance, I'm going to start passing observables through props, and that can lead to like weird behaviors, and I'm just going to write about why it's not such a great idea and what to do instead, right? Like you have a plan and then you write about it, whatever you know, and once you're done, you have the next step to look forward to. So maybe that could be a solution to this problem. And you can maybe even use some GPT thing and be like, hey, write me a plan to write the blog articles, and then you write them yourself, right? So at least
Yeah,
you just
yeah,
organize these things ahead of time.
yeah. So I watched some YouTube videos from like people like other people who also like blog and create content on YouTube like but I have it's there is a plan, there are things to talk about like Angular or like sometimes in like a programming, if you're making a tutorial, there is always the beginning, and at some point there is a width to where you can go in terms of topics. But this, everybody has this. And I'm not saying that, like, you're right, like, whatever you write, like, somebody finds it useful. And to be honest, I'm not so, I mean, it would be nice if someone finds it, like, useful. And that's the point. But I'm not exactly looking for, like, I hope to get, like, clicks or something like that. This is not the exact goal of it. But for myself too, it's like because every time I write, I also learn from it. So like the topics seems to be like it's a framework, and it's not that big a framework. Like you know where you're going to from. But if so, for example, when I'm writing about like Ruby stuff or like backend development, I feel like there is a lot of movements. There are many things that happens. There are different compositions of like backend development. But in front-end development, I find that so when you talk about inputs, you talk about like everything in the templates, you talk about like some technologies you can use in like maybe some in the TS file, and then you talk about um the NGRS state management. And I feel like that's probably like the moment you finish discussing state management, I find that like 60% of your development of the complexity in Angular programming is around that side. So like the moment you finish this, I find now you have to start talking about peculiar problems. And this is the issue. So when you start talking about peculiar problems, some things that you find to be some problems that you solve in your day-to-day activity, like your day-to-day work, it's a bit difficult to put it in a topic, like to to say, for example, the other day I was working on a model, and it was and then I think I got some requirements about like having a model inside a model, you know. Yeah, yeah, it's wild, but yeah, that's just pretty that's unique. But anyway, at the end of the day, we did end up going through this direction, but I still ended up working on it tentatively, just to as it was a requirement. But while I was doing this, I thought about like talking about it, like writing about this kind of things, But and then I'm not too sure how to structure the topic, and how do I even make it a post about doing something like this? Do you understand? Like the complexity of like talking about exact problems. And this is like the skill where I'm looking to go into now, because I don't want to just talk about like generic stuff like, oh, this is how you write a new component, or like, oh, this is how you whatever, like you
Right,
create a
right.
toggle function, sort function. Everybody can learn this on their own. Like I want to share like experiences and relatable experiences, as well as also keeping um not going into like privacy issues, like you don't get to say too much about, like,
Mm,
stuffs
I
that
see
you
what you
should not
mean.
be talking
Yeah.
too much about, like. But and so yeah, this is the challenge. So to make those relatable posts, you understand?
No, I understand. I understand. And I've been in a couple of situations where there's just like this very, very specific, weird problem that we're hitting, and it's kind of hard to understand how applicable it is to everybody else.
Mhm.
But you can still write about it. I think if you just go around trying to figure out how to write about it instead of actually writing about it, you can spend infinity time doing that and never writing anything, right? The
Yeah.
problem isn't that, there's all of these issues with writing. The problem is not writing. Like, you know, we talked about it two or three episodes ago, and it's just write more and you'll get better at it. The more you write, the better you get, the more understanding you will have in how to break down more complex topics, how to carry your main idea across so it's understood more rather than less, right? So it's just write more. The answer to 95% of these types of questions
Mm-hmm.
is write more, and it
Mm.
will show eventually, you know.
How how do you how do you come up with your ideas? Like when you write, like how do you come up with what you write about?
I think right now I don't deliberately do it. And maybe that's why I don't write as much, is because I have some idea or some sentiment on a spot and like, I can probably write a couple of paragraphs on it. And then I do. And I never really, like, I kind of just bang it out and put it up and never really revisit it as much. Like, there isn't very careful consideration about it. It's more of a, like, on a spot. And, because I work remote and I spend most of my time at home, my computer where I can go and sit down and write something is always kind of here. So if a thought strikes me, I'm like, oh, okay, we can write something on this. I can go and do it, but I never plan it. And um,
You don't plan the content?
I don't really plan the content because I guess the thing is, the content isn't really in my plans, so to speak. Like, you're trying deliberately to curate a blog, right? To write things in your blog. I happen to have a blog that I don't pay significant attention to currently, and I could, and I probably should. It would make it better in so many ways, but
Mm.
there's only so much time. So if I were to follow my own advice, I would still probably have to stick with pre-planning it ahead of time. Like, even with the podcast, it's very spontaneous for us, at least for me, in terms of, like, there isn't a plan, there isn't like a topic list.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder, maybe it would be better if there was.
Would you want to? I mean, if you want to, we can, well, yeah, we can probably do this. But there is a
Yeah.
plan. However,
Yes. I'm just not privy to it.
yeah.
But I think one of the other things is, um, I was watching a podcast, and I believe I even posted it in the Telegram channel, and that was with Alex Hormozy, and he was saying that whenever he writes some presentation, he, well, this guy is in sales, right? So he needs to write pitches to sell stuff to people, and the better the pitch, the more likelihood the people are gonna buy whatever you're selling to them, right?
Mhm.
And he basically says that whenever he writes something, he will do the pitch like 100 times and record himself doing it and look at all of the different things that are inconsistent or wrong, or the pauses are too long, or he has to recall something so it's not like immediate, and body language and posture and all of that stuff, like to go through everything and try to fix it and then do it and 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 do it up until it's literal perfection. And then he's confident enough in the fact that when he goes out on stage trying to, pitch it to general audience, that there's like nothing else that could have been done to it. So when I said like, oh, I just bang it out and publish it and whatever, right? I never spend that much attention to it to kind of make it as perfect as it possibly could be. And in his words, it's like the people who take it to that level get the most results in what they do compared to people who just kind of do a good enough job and put it out there, right? So maybe there's something to that too. It's obviously like if you're trying to express some idea, be it about some programming language concept or for some framework specific concept, there's multiple ways of doing it, and not all of them are going to be clear enough and perfectly understandable. So you can always refine it and seek ways for delivering it better so that whoever is reading it actually gets what you're trying to say. And sure, for I guess it kind of becomes this trap of simple things, like tutorial level things. Like the problem with tutorials is that they are very surface level. They don't go in depth enough, and they're easy to write because, hey, if you want to create a new component, you just say ng new component name, and it just generates it for you. There, tutorial done. So it's really easy to produce reams of content of that nature. Mm-hmm. But when you start going into more advanced topics, it becomes much harder. So it's harder to write. It's harder to convey your ideas. It's harder to find audience that will appreciate it, because once you start getting into these very narrow edge cases, fewer and fewer people are going to be, affected by those. But it's also nice that if I'm hitting some weird edge case and I Google for it and then somebody wrote about it, I'm like, oh, okay, I'm not the only person encountering this. There's a way through. I don't have to bang my head against the wall for nearly as long, because I can read some experiences from this person and, get some course adjustment for what I'm trying to solve. So I think there's value in both. Somebody needs to write the simple things so that complete beginners can just sort of put their toe in the water, so to speak. We don't expect them to do pearl diving if they're just learning how to swim, so to speak. But it is also of value. Like all of it is of value, I think. There isn't really anything that's just completely worthless. So I'm not really sure where I'm going with this. Just kind of had this thought that I'm trying to convey. Like, see, again, I could get better at trying to convey what it is that I'm trying to convey. So.
No, I think I understand your point. And yeah, these are things that I considered myself, when I think about it. But it's good to also hear things like this, like as a counsel, and for sure. I think that for sure what looking into and like working on. However, like I'm thinking now, like I think, what type of contents do you like writing about? What do you?
Considering how little I write, there isn't like I can't say that I have like some theme that I write about. It's whatever strikes me. Like my blog doesn't really have that much actual writing, so if I were to write about things, what would I write about? Yeah, that's a good question. You see, like writing is a very, very useful skill, because like I do the most ideas that I have, I convey through the format of speech. Like I don't necessarily write them down. because speech is easier. You can kind of waffle on some subject and wax poetic and like just go into like blah 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 these flowery explanations of things like I a lot of times do on the podcast. Writing is way more complicated because you actually have to condense it into something understandable and digestible. So that's a barrier. So I don't know. I don't think I have an answer for that. And I kind of now I feel like I should. And I was like, ooh, yeah, what would I write about that actually makes sense?
Yeah. I mean,
Busted.
no. Well, it's. I think the reason why I asked is because, like, I also think interests might also play roles in like in the creativity of these things. But I guess you know what? I'm gonna start with the planning, like you said, and I'll see. I'll see, because like it kind of bothers me a little bit, it worries me a little bit that I don't want to get to a point where I feel like I'm just doing a tutorial. I want
Yeah.
to actually share more experiences and more relatable scenario. Because at the end of the day, if you spend time on like Twitter or like okay, another thing I started enjoying more is like memes, software memes, software. And then I noticed that we all kind of go through the same similar scenarios. Like we kind of have like similar drama going on in our
Yeah.
days.
There's
Like
a lot of
you know,
relatable
yeah,
stuff. Yeah.
yeah. So I find like in that case, then I guess like when it comes to like the work itself as well, I imagine like the issues that we are solving might be similar or related in some sort. So I guess this is the stage I am now that I just don't know. If you want to do a tutorial on Angular, there is a structure for it. You know, you start from here, 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 and then you get different topics. But if you want to like share your experiences as you, there is no there is no existing structure for this,
Yeah.
except
Which
you
also means
want.
that you could literally do whatever you want, right? So I was just thinking about a couple more things. Is that one of them is whenever you go through something, you have to take notes so that when you write your blog post about it, you actually have something to refer to because you might remember
Yeah,
parts of it. You have to kind of be prepared.
yeah, I guess,
You
yeah.
know, you hit some weird situation and it's like, oh, I better jot something down so that next time I have something. And I thought that the other thing is you can write tutorials for things that you're completely unfamiliar with as you are in the process of learning it. So if you're just picking up some completely brand new framework that you never used before and just write about your experience going through it and what you find and what you notice, because I think that's also relatable. And I think one of the good reasons to have it written down is again, you know how in the flock of birds migrating, the strongest bird is up front creating draft for all the birds behind it, so they don't have to waste as much energy, you know, resisting the wind. Or you know, when you have a bunch of people walking through the snow,
Mm-hmm.
there's gonna be
Mm-hmm.
somebody at the front putting the you know the trail down, and everybody behind them doesn't have to work as hard, right? So it's be that, you
Yeah.
know, like this is me completely not knowing what I'm doing, trying to get through this thing. And as I
Mm,
learn it and get better, I recall my
yeah.
experiences and put them down. So if
Okay.
you're interested in doing something similar, you know, you can walk a little bit in my footsteps and save yourself some hassle along the way. I think that's very valuable.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to. It is indeed, and I think I thought about it, but I didn't have this much ideas like the way you've put it, and it's a good thing to consider. So yeah, for sure. I guess this is my take home for the week. So I'm gonna do some work. This is my assignment. I'm gonna do some work about it because I don't want to get to the point where I'm just doing bare tutorials. I don't. I guess, but I enjoy doing the tutorials because I like to teach. And I also, I mean, I enjoy it. It's just I'm looking for a way to share like the real actual experience. So for example, like maybe okay, a good one might be like, I mean, at the end of the day, it could still kind of be like a
Yeah.
tutorial. So maybe you
Well,
are trying to
you
integrate a new plugin or
yeah.
something like that.
But I guess I'm saying like you don't have to tell me this right now. You can just sit down and write about it.
Yeah, you see, I'm thinking about it already. Anyway, yeah, sure. So, yeah, that's what I wanted to check with you today, actually,
Yeah.
and to discuss this with you. So, thank you, Vasili. I'm going to do my assignment, and I will get back to you and have a good.
All right, Mo. Thank you very much. I hope for everyone who's with us right now, this has been informative and valuable. And if it was, please let us know. Join the Telegram or Discord or leave us a comment. Thank you very much. And until next time, have a great day.